individual. So what are the options before you? One of the option before you is you can remotely wipe off that data. That's fantastic if you have that feature installed. But please understand the legal implications of doing that. If you do that without informing or taking consent of that person, in most of the countries that person can sue you for hacking into his device. That device is owned by the individual. An organization, as an organization, you are wiping it, and based on the different legal frameworks that exist in different countries, in most of the countries you might be able to sue the organization for doing this. So what? So please involve your legal folk as well when you embark on this initiative, not at the end. Do you have written consent from the individual at the time the person enrolls that I shall agree to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, abiding by the policy, being careful, permitting wiping of my device, giving rights to the organization to manipulate my device. Am I doing that? If I don't have it, you are landing into deep trouble. So there are legal aspects as well when we look at BYOD.
What you're saying, definitely in BlackBerry, in fact my organization is there. But I'm not sure if the same can work on a tab. How would it work on a tab?
Again, as I said, it's technology specific, answers are technology specific. You might have to go in for a MDM solution which creates that capability for that organization to control your tab remotely, or if it is isolated. For example, talking about a most native technology like ActiveSync, okay, that has an inherent feature, inbuilt feature where you can wipe a device remotely. But the point is, please understand how you are going to couple the technology capability with ensuring that you are on the right side of the law. And what creates another challenge from the culture aspect, let me tell you. I bring in my device, I bring in my fancy iPhone 5 which will be out in the market, and I sign on the dotted line saying that this is my phone and I give you the rights to do all this. So you see a dichotomy there, and a lot of users are going to be put away by this. But then you have to decide as an organization what is high risk, what is the kind of risk that you are willing to take, what is the kind of risk that you are not willing to take. And unfortunately, legal documents come in, get referred only when there is an issue. So as auditors, your great value add will be when you are embarking on the initiative, have you looked at all the legal aspects? So that was a good question. So how do you control the tab? There is a family of product that is referred to as MDM solutions or mobile device management solutions. So what do these solutions do? These solutions help controlled distribution of software. If you want to enforce a policy, like let's say my password is going to be X characters, Y, this is going to be the syntax, it helps you to enforce that. It helps you to do inventory management. Where is my device? How many devices do I have? Because it's a huge headache. Those who have gone through this entire process, they would be able to relate. There are so many devices coming in every day that keeping a manual inventory on an Excel sheet is something that is really difficult. And therefore, again, a challenge is how do you marry your processes with the MDM data? How do you keep it current? How do you ensure that integrity of all this data is maintained? But again, each of this is an audit point. As experienced auditors, you would realize each of this potentially can be an audit by itself. And each of this by itself is bringing in a own risk. For example, you can do a great value add to the organization as auditors if you just concentrate on what is your provisioning process, what are the controls that are built in into the provisioning process when you permit mobile devices to connect to your network. So these are some of the kind of things that are possible. There are a lot of vendors in the market, vendors like AirWatch, Mobile Iron, Fiberlink, Zen, Price, name it, and there are a lot of vendors there. But again, this is relatively a new technology, a technology you are seeing in the last 2-3 years at the most, and therefore it's not a perfect technology. It's an emerging technology. For example, all of you have heard about Gartner. Gartner, for example, has come out with its first magic quadrant for MDM only in 2011. So that is the level of maturity that we are in. And if you are interested and if you are doing any audits in this space, don't get clouded by the vendor specific information, but the Gartner paper, the magic quadrant, is available for you to read on the internet. That will tell you a lot about this technology. So what specifically are the kind of things that your MDM can do? MDM can enforce passwords, MDM can wipe devices, and very importantly, MDM can do jailbreaking detection. How many of you know what is jailbreaking? Okay, I have a slide there, we will discuss what it is. So it helps you to do a lot of configuration level management. It helps you to exercise a degree of control over your mobile devices. But again, as I said, and that is where the auditor comes in, you know. A technology professional is going to sleep easy believing that once an MDM solution is implemented, everything is hunky-dory, nothing to worry. It's the person who wonders what the cat was curious about who is going to ask awkward questions. So I see a lot of value add from the auditors, even if you are going in for MDM implementation kind of a project. Coming to mobile malware. So what is the mobile malware? What does it look like? Mobile malware, depending upon what reference you use, there are a lot of references available over the internet. But depending upon what source you are referring to, anywhere between 80 to 95% of mobile malware is just two types, namely spyware and Trojans. Though you have a lot of mobile malware categories, you have technically man in the middle kind of malware available, you have certain zombies, you have kind of viruses coming in, but the predominant malware that is there is spyware and Trojans. Now why is that? It is, you see that because it is very easy to have these kind of malwares. For example, I build in a mal application, I put it on some third party application store, and all I have to do is wait for some user to download it. Now even if 10, 20, 100, 1000, 10,000 users download it, I still have a window of opportunity. Now if you know what the ecosystem of app stores look like, you have predominant players. For example, Apple. Apple is predominantly a closed system where if you want to download something, you need to use the official Apple application store. If you are on Android, it's an open platform. So it is very easy for me to put something up there which is malicious, which claims to be doing certain functionality, and just relax, just hope that some people are going to download it. I don't need to do anything more than that. And that is what makes mobile malware so dangerous. Now, talking about malware, if you look at Apple, if you look at Google, they they have matured their processes to an extent where they can wipe off the malware from their stores, or they can prevent malware from being distributed from their stores. But what about third party stores? Who controls those? Now, as auditors, what should be your organization standards when using applications? That's a very relevant audit point. That's a very relevant control point. Do you have standards around how you are going to use applications, how applications are going to be downloaded? Do you have controls around that? And so that's a very pertinent question that you need to ask as auditors. So some of the specific threats, what kind of threats do you have? You have a category of attacks called as drive-by downloads. These attacks look at browser vulnerabilities. There are inherent vulnerabilities in the browser where if you visit a particular site, a lot of malware gets downloaded. Then you have something called as fake installers, which are more of social engineering attacks, where I put up an application saying that, download this for free, and it's an installer, but when it installs something, it is installing some malware as well. Or I put up a application for sale which is already available for free. So there is somebody who has been kind enough to have a free application, and I put up another installer there and I say, okay, give me $1, I'll give you this application. So these are all kind of threats that come in. Wi-Fi attacks. Relatively, if you look at it, worms are relatively few in this ecosystem. That doesn't mean you may not come across this, but if you compare the percentage of malware, these kind of things are lesser in frequency as compared to the fake installers, drive-by downloads, and so on. Many of these malwares, what they do is that they send, without your understanding, without your notice, a lot of SMS to premium numbers, increase your billing and create revenue for those numbers. So a very simplistic approach is, as auditors, build in a process where when you get a bill from your service provider, have a degree of diligence over the bill you receive. The bill is not just meant for signing off, the bill is also meant for looking at where you have incurred the cost. And that could be one indicator which might disclose in a non-technical way whether there is a problem somewhere. Coming to jailbreaking and rooting, what is jailbreaking? For example, if you are in the Apple ecosystem, in the iOS only allows you a certain degree of access. The rationale is, if you go anywhere beyond that, you might be doing things that might compromise the security of the device. In a similar way, in the Android ecosystem, what hackers want to do is they want to get root privilege, which is not the norm that is available. So if you take certain actions, you in the Apple's ecosystem do what is known as a jailbreak. That means you go beyond the functionality that is made available by Apple, or in the Android ecosystem you go to the root. It's like becoming a Unix root privilege and do whatever you want with the entire file system. Now, what is its implication? Is this illegal? No. As per, there have been cases on this front, and legally this is not illegal because you own that device and you are doing something to the device that is owned by you, and there are case laws on this. So it is not illegal. But from the security perspective, is it something that you need to be concerned with? Yes. You need to be concerned with, because the moment, for example, you jailbreak an Apple device, Apple throws up its hands. If anything happens to your device, they say, hey, you have transgressed the boundary, please don't hold us responsible. Secondly, there are certain sandboxing capabilities that are there as a part of the iOS ecosystem. The moment you jailbreak, you are able to transgress those. What sandboxes mean is that, for example, there is an application, that application within the memory will run only within its context. If you jailbreak, you may have capabilities to run it in a different context, whereby not just compromising the sandbox, but compromising the entire kernel, compromising the entire device. And therefore, this is an ethical question. Ethical because if I am talking of BYOD, can I tell you, can I make you sign on the dotted line that you are not going to jailbreak? It's difficult, right? But if it's a company owned device, I can definitely, as a owner of the device, demand compliance. Or for that matter, even if you are enrolling for the BYOD, that can be a precondition. I can argue it on that front. Okay, it might be your device, but if you want to enroll, please ensure that you comply to these things. If you do not comply to these things, sorry, we are not interested. As auditors, therefore, as a part of your checklist, you might be interested in identifying whether the devices have been rooted or jailbroken. How do you do that? There are no simple ways, but indicators are, for example, there is a third-party app store called as Cydia for Apple. If you see that icon somewhere, if you see references to that somewhere, it's jailbroken. If you can see that you can save files anywhere on that device, not just in that context, it's an indication that it is jailbroken. So from the security perspective, there is definitely a lot of concern if devices are jailbroken or rooted. But as security professionals, if you want to assess security of certain elements on that device, the first thing that you have to do is jailbreak. For example, if I am testing at the technology layer security of an application, if I on the Android device I want to reverse engineer some binaries, the first thing I do is I go and root the device. So you need to make a distinction between within your organizations who would be allowed to root and who would not be allowed to root. ENISA has done a lot of work. There are a lot of white papers available. Unfortunately, my presentation was not there on that CD that was distributed, so I arranged for a few, but they are short. I have a few here, but I believe they are going to put it on the website as well. Or if you want certain material, if you send me an email, I can try and send it out to you. But there is a very fantastic paper that has come out from ENISA, which enumerates all the risk. I have tried to include these white papers also in that CD, those who have them. Otherwise, I believe they are going to be put on the website. Now, coming specifically to some of the platforms, let's spend a couple of minutes on these. For example, what are the concerns on Android? The concerns on Android is the greatest strength is its greatest weakness. The same is true for Apple as well. For example, the fact that it is open, the fact that it is most widely deployed, it means that mal apps can stay on the open marketplace for a longer time. So as auditors, what do you have to think about? As auditors, you have to think about, are there policies about using applications that are hosted on the third-party application stores? Another concern with Android is that patching is a lot of time dependent upon not Google, but on that equipment provider that you are using. If you are using a Samsung phone, applying patches is dependent to an extent on Samsung, because that's where it is happening. So then that gives me, as a hacker, a window of opportunity where devices may not be secured. There are certain controls that have been built in. For example, there is a service called as a bouncer service by Google, which checks for an application being a malware before it is permitted to be put up on the App Store. So there are controls, but as auditors, you know, controls and risk is always a cat and mouse game, and the game is going to continue that way. What are the iOS concerns? The iOS concerns are that today there is no competitive market. This is more of a strategic concern. But today for Apple, there is no competitive security market for iOS because it's a closed system. So if you look at it from the evolution of a product, evolution of technology, you know what happens when there is limited competition. So there is a risk that the iOS could build in a lot of complacency because it is a closed system, and because it is a closed system, there is no competition. So technologically, you are not making a lot of advancement when it comes to security. Interestingly, there is a proof of concept hack even on iOS, which was demonstrated in 2011 by an individual named Charlie Miller. In iOS, unless you have the right kind of permissions, unless your code is signed, you cannot load your application into the App Store. But Miller was able to prove that he was able to overcome this restriction and load something which was not officially signed by Apple guys. So proof of concept for breaking into iOS ecosystem is ready already. Fine, Apple has gone ahead, they have patched this vulnerability, they have done this, but it sends across a very powerful message that don't imagine just because you are closed, it means that you will be secure forever. Similar concerns do exist for BlackBerry. For BlackBerry, there was a huge outbreak of a very potent malware called as Zitmo. It was a variant of Zeus Trojan. It captured a lot of user credentials, particularly in the mobile banking area. And a major concern with BlackBerry for corporates at the corporate level is that BlackBerry is generally losing out, as you saw in the earlier slide, in terms of market share. Now, does that mean anything to you as an organization? I do not know. It may or it may not. But then at the macro level, as a platform, it is losing out on various counts to competitors. So when we are looking at security, again I've borrowed this from ENISA. What are the things that you should look at when it comes to security? Sandboxing capabilities. This ecosystem gives you opportunities for sandboxing, for putting in encryption, putting in authentication options, trying to build multiple layers. So has your risk assessment pointed out to a need for this? And if it has pointed out to a need for this, have you gone ahead with implementing these security opportunities that exist? So what do? We play safe. Do not download applications from third parties. As organizations think you have an acceptable usage policy, you are aware security awareness training, etc. Have you incorporated mobile technology into your acceptable usage policy, or do you need to revisit your awareness training material, your acceptable usage policy, to bring it current with mobile technologies? That I find a lot of organizations are still doing that. Try to use the optimal device settings, disable whatever you do not want. And in terms of human behavior, please exercise diligence that you should when you are looking at your mobiles. A very important component of your mobile ecosystem are the applications. And again, when we talk about applications, there is no single architecture, there are multiple architectures. So if you are doing an audit of an application, please get a background of what that architecture is. Please get a background of the risk that are introduced by each of that architecture. That is a great value add that you can bring in to the organization. One thing that is seen is that most of the mobile applications make a heavy use of web services, and a lot of web services are known to be vulnerable. You might not see a lot of vulnerabilities on the application per se, but there could be a lot of authentication vulnerabilities at the web services level, which means that you are exposing the entire ecosystem. These are the characteristics of the applications due to which risks do emerge in applications. A lot of them are ported. I had an application in the web world, I want to bring it into the mobile world. So I just port it there, or I download it. It's not developed by me, so I don't know what has gone into it. Heavy reliance on web services, limitations with respect to GUI, a potent opportunity for fishers. I cannot display everything on that screen. I have to optimize what I can display on the screen. So really a potent opportunity for fishers to hide a lot of stuff. And personalization. I personalize my device, and without knowing what I am doing, I could be opening doors. OWASP has come up with, this is not the final thing, you can refer to it on the site as well, but OWASP has also come up with the top 10 mobile risks, but it is still in a draft stage. It was to be ready a bit earlier, but I don't see a change in the status. Again, as auditors, please try to use this when you are trying to advise secure mobile application development, or trying to evaluate the way applications are being developed in your organization. Try to use these kind of controls when doing that, because there are a lot of misconceptions. I am not exaggerating. About 30 to 40% of the mobile developers I have met, unfortunately I don't have data to back up what I am trying to say, so you may want to disagree with me, I take it. So about 30 to 40% of the mobile developers I have met have argued with me the need for proper session handling in mobile applications. They say no, it's a different paradigm, it's a different mindset. But hey, a different mindset doesn't mean that you have weakness into your architecture. So there is a lot you can do as auditors by scratching on what kind of standards people are using for application development. OWASP and ENISA have come up with very good application design principles related to what your design principles should address. They should address data, they should address secure credentials, they should address authorization, they should address how APIs are exposed. All these things have been done already. We are going slightly into a technical domain, but even if you are not doing an in-depth technical audit, these can be some areas which form a part of your scope, where you can do a due diligence with respect to some of the best practices and the design principles that are being adopted. The moment you ask these questions, as auditors, people are going to respect you. The developers next time are going to come to you to ask you more about how things should be done. So I would request you to use all these resources that are available. A lot of, in case as auditors your mandate is also going into more technical aspects related to the evaluation, I would say there are a lot of tools that are available. Please make use of those tools as well. They are available across the platforms. Some of them are paid, some of them are open source, but it's a great experience to do assessment, particularly an application assessment, because it's even technically it's quite challenging. So coming back to how do you plan the audit? What are the things you need to look at before you launch into an audit related to the mobile? So you need to look at the business case, you need to look at the policies, you need to look at the technology infrastructure, you need to look at the relevance of that application to the entire business ecosystem. All that is known, so I can't tell you more on that.